Here to discuss, Alan Dershowitz, defense attorney and the author of Electile Dysfunction, a guide for unaroused voters. Interesting book. Pate, a constitutional and criminal defense attorney, and Richard Painter. He served as chief White House ethics lawyer under George W. Bush. I'm excited about this conversation, so thank you all for joining me. Richard, I'm going to start with you because you wrote this article in the New York Times this Sunday on the Clinton emails. Did FBI director abuse his power, was the question. So in that, you say that you filed a complaint against Director Comey with the Office of Special Counsel saying, yes, his letter to Congress was an abuse of power. Why do you think he broke the law?
Well, the Hatch Act is a law that's been around since the 1930s that prohibits executive branch officials from using their official position for the purpose of promoting a political candidate or influencing an election. And that is not allowed for executive branch officials other than the president and the vice president. They're not subject to the Hatch Act, but everyone else is. Mr. Comey, when he sent that letter over to Congress, knew that that was going to be used for political purposes within 10 days of an election. There was just no reason for him to be telling members of Congress about investigations underway by the FBI. That is a violation of the Justice Department policy. There's no reason for it other than to further partisan politics, and that's unacceptable.
Alan, you disagree?
We do not.
Fundamentally disagree. Here we have another example of a very brilliant guy trying to criminalize policy differences, just like Fareed Zakaria and David Gergen said before. Let's criticize Comey if we want to criticize him, but he didn't violate the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act requires knowledge or intent. What Comey did is he thought he had to protect his own integrity. He had no interest, I agree with the president, in putting his thumb on the scale. I didn't even know who he is supporting for the president. And he had perfect right to make an announcement. The problem is he made the wrong announcement. What he should have said is, look, under the Fourth Amendment, I'm not allowed to look into the content of these emails, and I haven't. Neither have any of my FBI agents. We have no idea any more than you do what's in them. But we're going to look to see what's in them. But nobody should infer any guilt or anything negative from the fact that we're looking into them. That's what he should have said. That's what he should say now. And if he doesn't say it now, he will have his thumb on the scale, though that was not his intent.
Isn't that the problem with most of the critics, though, on the left and the right, Republicans and Democrats, is that they don't know what's in there, Paige. They don't know if there's anything that will, cause Hillary Clinton any harm, if she is directly connected. And by coming out and doing this now, there is the assumption of guilt. Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree that people have made a lot of assumptions here, but I don't blame James Comey for those assumptions. First of all, I agree with Alan completely that there's no violation of the Hatch Act here. The language in the Hatch Act that's critical is that you do something for the purpose of influencing an election, and I don't think there's any evidence that James Comey intended to influence this election.
Is there an abuse of power here anywhere?
I don't think so. I mean, I understand the criticism relating to internal Justice Department policy that maybe he should not have said anything at all, even back when he spoke to Congress initially. But I think most Americans are a lot more concerned about transparency and truth than internal Justice Department guidelines and tradition. And I think that's what James Comey is going at.
Here's the test. We all like James Comey. We all think he's a decent guy. Remember who the building's named after: J. Edgar Hoover. And whatever James Comey does, the next director of the FBI, who could be J. Edgar Hoover, will do also. So he's establishing a very dangerous precedent for future directors of the FBI, because they could want to influence the outcome of elections. Now, we're all saying what a terrible thing it would be if Hillary Clinton won the election and then it turns out that there might be some stuff negative about Hillary Clinton. But what about the opposite, which he apparently didn't consider? What if he turns it around? Donald Trump wins the election, and then December 1st he announces, oh, by the way, all of these emails were duplicates of what we've seen before. Sorry, folks, for changing the outcome of the election, but I was just doing my job.
Well, I don't think he has any choice about that. I really think now that those emails have come to light, they've been dropped on his desk, he has to look into them. And yes, Alan, I agree with you. He could have worded the letter differently.
And
I'm
he
sure
should now.
Well, there's not anything else he can do now that's going to advance this debate, anything other than affecting the election more than it already has.
No, I think that's wrong. I think if he got up and he said, look, when I made that statement, I had no idea what was in those emails, because if anybody had told me what was in those emails, they'd be violating the Fourth Amendment. There was no search warrant to look at any of those emails. So I don't know what's in them. I don't know any more than you do. Don't let your vote be influenced by my statement to Congress, which was a technical obligation I had simply to tell them that we have no information.
Go ahead, Richard.
Who said this is an obligation? If he's looking into Donald Trump's computer, he ought to be looking into Donald Trump's campaign and their relationship with the Russians.
I agree.
There's plenty they ought to be investigating, but they shouldn't be updating the Democrats on the Hill about what they're looking into with respect to the Trump campaign and the Russians
The New York
and
Times
computer
has
hacking.
a story tonight that Donald Trump may very well have committed criminal tax fraud back in the 90s when he took major tax deductions for other people's losses based on a letter from lawyers that said you're probably not going to get this accepted by the IRS. So look, if he thinks he has to look into ongoing problems, he should look into Trump University. He should look into Trump's tax problems. He should look into the relationship with Russia. He shouldn't be singling this one out for getting involved in the campaign. I agree with that, but it's not criminal conduct.
And he shouldn't be talking to Congress about it. He shouldn't be talking to Congress.
Yeah.
Well, who says he's not looking into this?
Paige, hold your thought. I'll let you be the first one right out of this break. We'll be right back. So back now with my panel. Paige, Pate, you had the floor. You were saying we really don't know if the Director Comey, is investigating any of the other things, but he's not commenting on those other things.
Right, and there would be no reason for him to comment on those other things. I think in a normal investigation where he's not already come out and said this investigation is complete, we're moving on, there's nothing else to see here, then there's no obligation for the director of the FBI or anyone in the Justice Department to talk about the details or even the fact of an investigation.
Well, what if Congress had subpoenaed him and asked him if he's investigating these things? He'd probably say, look, Justice Department policy is not to disclose the fact that we're doing an investigation. Look, the worst thing that happened here is for Comey to have even made an announcement when he stopped the investigation of Hillary Clinton. That's the job of the Attorney General. The director of the FBI is not supposed to make policy, not supposed to make prosecutorial decisions. He's simply supposed to gather the evidence and maybe make a prosecutorial recommendation.
But Alan,
he
where
became
was
the
the
effective
Attorney
prosecutor.
General? Where
That's
was
the
the
problem.
Attorney General?
That's
Exactly,
the problem.
that's the problem.
And
he was left holding the bag here, and the last person to make the decision about moving forward or not. That is highly unusual, as you must admit. Normally, there's a prosecutor overseeing that decision, but no one wanted to touch it, so they left it up to him. Now they're criticizing the way he's handling it.
That's right, and Bill Clinton has to
But he
take
had no
some of the
obligation to tell
responsibility.
Congress.
Right.
Go ahead, Richard.
Where does he have this obligation? To
To
tell
tell Congress?
He has no
he had no
obligation.
obligation. I think it was a reasonable decision he made, but he was not required
It was
to tell
illegal because he knew how it was going to be used. He knew it was going to be put up on the internet because all the members care about is politically attacking Hillary Clinton. And I'm a Republican. I would like to see a good Republican president and a good Republican Congress. But this kind of behavior really reflects very badly on the Congress. And the FBI got sucked into politics on the eve of an election. And that's not what the FBI is there for. They are not there to provide updates to members of Congress on investigations of their political enemies. And the same for the president. The president has no right to updates from the FBI on the FBI's investigation of political opponents. And I don't want to hear any more of this about unusual circumstances that were created by this congressional committee continuing to put pressure on the FBI for over a year with respect to this email server.
But now, Hillary
is
Clinton is putting pressure on the FBI, and I think her campaign is making a terrible tactical mistake. They are goading Comey into finding something, because what they're saying is, hey, there's nothing. You're going to end up making me lose the election, and there's nothing here, and you're going to be the villain. If I'm Comey and I'm thinking about my legacy and my future, I'm saying to myself, I darn well better find something to justify the statement I previously
Well,
made. So
and
she's
that's the
making a
point.
terrible
Then he's going to
mistake
dig
here.
himself
That's the
even
point.
deeper. I mean, that's crazy. He would
I
dig
don't think
himself
Comey's
even
worried
deeper
about
in
his
this mess.
future. I don't think Comey's worried about the political consequences. I think Comey's worried about doing what's right, and that's why I think his decision was reasonable.
Everybody
But
worries
this is,
about that.
you know, I heard you say that earlier, Alan, and Fareed Zakaria made a very similar point, is that why poke the bear? Why is Hillary Clinton going out and saying she should not be, you know, in your estimation, and even I think in Fareed Zakaria's estimation, Fareed said, you know, if you send a police officer to follow someone for 500 miles, you're going to find them doing something wrong.
Especially if you have an incentive because you've been accused of affecting the election without there being any basis. There may be no basis, but believe me, somebody will find something to justify his doing this if he's provoked. I think the president got it exactly right.
Yeah.
Comey is a decent man. He's a man of integrity. But he has to defend himself now because he's being criticized by Republicans and Democrats alike, by scholars and academics. And he's out there. I'm not going to defend him, says the president. He has to defend himself. And he's not doing a good job of it. And his silence now is unacceptable.
Richard, I want to ask you, so Richard, on what Alan just said, would you like to see the director come out and make a clarification? And if so, what would you like him to say? How can he rectify this?
I think he got to do his job, which is to investigate, and not to be talking to the public or to members of Congress about his investigations. That's the job of the FBI. And they should not be taking Donald Trump's FBI file and giving it to the Democrats or making further statements about Hillary Clinton. That's just going to make it worse. He's going to dig himself in deeper and deeper. And we have already destroyed the credibility of the FBI over the past few days with respect to this, and now there are leaks coming out of the FBI about what they're investigating with respect to Donald Trump. And this is a travesty. This is not what the FBI should be doing
I
in
respectfully
election
disagree.
year.
Having once made the announcement, I think he has an obligation now to say, on the day I made the announcement, I knew no more than any of you did. Because to know what's in those emails would be to violate the Fourth Amendment, and we don't violate the Fourth Amendment. So don't infer from anything I previously said any presumption of guilt or even relevance. Now I'm not going to say anything else, and because I'm not going to say anything else, I want to leave you with the message of I didn't know anything about the content of these emails when I made my statement.
Paige,
That's
what's wrong
what
with
he owes
that?
us.
There's nothing wrong with
And
that.
I shouldn't have sent the letter.
Had that been said in the initial letter. Again, I think it was reasonable to send the letter since he already made the announcement. The investigation is complete. It's no longer complete. He needs to let Congress know because the facts are now inconsistent with his earlier testimony. I agree with Alan. The letter could have been worded differently, but it's not. We don't go back and edit it now. And the letter apparently Alan wants him to send would have been 5, 6, 7 pages, and I'm sure both sides would have read a lot more into that letter.
I can do it in 2 paragraphs. I actually did it in an article in The Hill yesterday. I actually drafted the letter. It's 2 paragraphs long. He should send it right now.
And check it out on thehill.com. But Richard, you agree. You said he should, and he should say, I should not have sent the initial letter. Is that what you just said?
He should say that. There is no obligation to tell Congress when you open an investigation or reopen an investigation. Otherwise, every campaign contributor who doesn't like being investigated by the FBI would make sure that members of Congress hold hearings and get a promise from the director to notify them as soon as there's an investigation.
Yeah.
That's not the way the FBI does business.
You're right.
They
Fascinating.
investigate
This is a
when they want to
dangerous
investigate and they
precedent.
keep
This
their
is
mouth
a
shut.
dangerous
Fascinating conversation from 3 brilliant men. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Thank you.